I just wrapped up my 5th week of training for Ironman Florida, which is coming up 61 days from today. So about 8 or 9 weeks out from that. And so far, training's been going very well. This week was a little bit lighter in terms of volume than the weeks that preceded it, as I transitioned from a kind of strength-based, focus in the early parts of my program, now transitioning more to an endurance block of training. So I went from doing 15, 16-hour weeks the weeks preceding this to only about 12 and a half hours in the 5th week of the training, but that's going to be ramping up quite a bit, especially for week 6. So make no mistake, this is a grind, showing up for all these training sessions day after day, week after week. You carry some fatigue with you throughout this process, and it is a grind. It's hard to show up and bring your best to every one of these sessions. But after doing this for a few years, I've become kind of a professional, and it just feels like I set the time and date for the session, and I go out and I try to execute that day's training plan to the best of my ability. And if you do that consistently, you see great results, and that's what I've seen. So I started week 5 carrying a bit of fatigue. The end of week 4 featured a big weekend of work. I had a run with intensity on Saturday, and then a swim after, and then a 5-hour bike ride, and then a swim after on Sunday. So I woke up Monday. I wasn't feeling my best, but Mondays typically are recovery-focused day. I did an easy bike session, just spinning the legs, and then some easy strength training. Right? When I'm strength training and I'm feeling like this, it's really a supportive training session. I am not trying to set any kind of PRs or anything like that. I am just, getting that strength training in to help support all these triathlon sessions that I'm doing. The strength training sessions are not as important as the swimming, the biking, and the running, but they are still very important for maintaining my body throughout this process. So I did that on Monday, and then, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays tend to be bigger training days. Tuesday was a swim and a run in the evening. Wednesday was a brick workout, but a short one, only about an hour and a half. And then Thursday, there was a swim and then a bike ride in the afternoon. And by Thursday, I was again fatigued. So Fridays, again, tend to be geared toward active recovery. I did an easy 65 minutes on the bike that day, and then another light strength training session. So I was feeling pretty good going into the weekend. On Saturday, I did an 11.6-mile run, and then Sunday, I had to really deal with a little bit of adversity with my training plan. I planned to go out for a run at this one park. There's one park in the area that features some hills. It's a former garbage dump, and it's the only place you can go run hills at. And it has a nice little dirt and stone trail on it. So it's a nice place to run compared to most of the areas in South Florida, which are just flat concrete. So I headed out there at 8 a.m. on Sunday when the park was supposed to open, and I got there only to see that the park was closed for a special event. And I didn't really have a great backup plan as to where to go run, because there was nowhere else that I could really run hills like this. So I decided to drive home and then take it to the treadmill. So running 100 minutes on the treadmill is a pretty daunting challenge. It's a real mental challenge, more than a physical challenge, really. But this is the kind of thing that helps callous the mind before a 12-hour endurance race. If I can't spend 100 minutes running on the treadmill, how am I going to, get through a 12-hour Ironman? So I ground that out and then hit a swim session on Sunday afternoon. I was carrying a bit of fatigue, but the swim was designed with that in mind. It was 3,450 yards, but an easy swim, a lot of swim toys, use some snorkel, use some fins. I used the pull buoy for most of the main set, and it just makes it kind of easier, but I got some good reps in there. So, waking up today, carrying a bit of fatigue, but that's to be expected. It's a Monday again, so it ends up being another recovery-focused day with an easy bike session, and then, like I said, I'm transitioned now into an endurance-focused training block. So I am in the middle of a 5-day stretch that'll feature about 7 hours of running, provided I'm able to complete what I intend to do. So it was 2 long runs on Saturday and Sunday. Today is off, and then tomorrow is a swim session followed by a run in the afternoon, and then Wednesday is another long run where hopefully I can go to the park and actually run some hills. So that's, this running block is going to help me with building leg strength and resiliency to get through the run portion of the Ironman, and then following these few days is going to be a really big block of cycling, something like 14 hours over 5 days, with a bunch of sessions. I'm going to hopefully hit a century this upcoming weekend and set a distance PR on Saturday. So a lot of cycling coming up, and again, these are the more endurance focused training sessions. I don't do a ton of stuff like this, but I'm doing enough to make sure that come race day I am comfortable with extending my efforts out to the distance that it needs to go. So that's what I've been doing, but overall training's been going great. Last week I ran 32.4 miles. That's the most that I have run since March of 2021 when I did a 4x4 by 48. So I ended up with 48 miles in 2 days then. But all throughout the rest of last year and then into this year, I haven't run this much. And I feel great, the changes I've made regarding my foot strength and my foot, strike on the ground, the shoe changes I've made. I am able to do all this running pain-free, and I'm really grateful for that. I started to have some niggling injuries, and I started to doubt whether or not I would be able to complete this training process even parts. Earlier in this year, I felt a little bit broken down, but that's gone now. And even with this high training volume, I feel great and I feel strong, and I really have no significant physical issues to report. Which I'm grateful for that. So it's been a lot of running. I'm looking forward to these next 2 runs. Nothing, not pushing the pace or anything like that. This is just all about building up muscular endurance, building up leg strength. I'm not going to run the Ironman marathon leg very fast, right? So I'm not going to be running 8-minute miles out there. I know that. So with terms of training, I do all my running outdoors. It is always hot. It is always humid. This is South Florida. I couldn't tell you the last time that I ran outside with the heat index under 90. I'm very looking forward to the opportunity to do that. But what that means is, when my runs are easy and slow runs, I've really got to pull back on the pace. And that's been demoralizing for me at times, having to do that with run after run after run. I had run in the heat before, but it wasn't really a habitual thing living in New Jersey. I could usually find opportunities to run when it was more hospitable. So, that might mean on the occasional session having to, swallow your pride and go slow, but it's different when every session for months is like that. And, it slows me down a lot. This time last year, I was running zone 2 runs, around 9-minute miles, and now I'm running them at 10.5-minute miles. And the heat is a big factor, at least as far as I can tell, because every day I'm out there, it is hot and it's humid. So I'm looking forward to it getting a bit more hospitable here. It's a little bit better than it was at the peak of the summer, but it's still very hot whenever I run. But I'm hopeful that this training in the heat will make me better and stronger come race day, November the 5th in Panama City Beach. It should be much friendlier conditions that day, probably in the 60s or low 70s, and I will be very much looking forward to competing in Ironman Florida in those sort of weather conditions after spending this whole hot spring and hot summer training in the heat. So all in all, training's going well. I'm gonna change into my bib and hit an easy bike session now, spin my legs, and gear up for another big training block coming this week.